The Marvel Cinematic Universe has given us some pretty amazing villains. Michael B. Jordan's Killmonger, for example, made us all empathize with a baddie in ways that no other Marvel villain had before. And Thanos will more than likely go down in cinematic history as one of the best bad guys ever. On the other hand, there were some stinkers. I'm looking at you, Malekith. Sitting pretty comfortably in the middle ground, though, is someone that often doesn't get the credit that he deserves, in my opinion. That being Ultron, the murderous deathbot created by a rather reckless pairing of Tony Stark and Bruce Banner, utilizing the powers of the Mind Stone. There was a lot of potential for an amazing villain with Ultron, potential that was arguably wasted by taking him out within only one film. So, with that in mind, let's take a look at a couple of ways that Disney and Marvel could correct this by bringing Ultron back for a second go-around. Let's go ahead and dive right into it. Okay, so let's start off with a fun one that I don't exactly see happening, but hey, a guy can dream, right? WandaVision on Disney Plus has kicked off the fourth phase of the MCU with aplomb. The twisted reality created by Wanda Maximoff is simultaneously fun to watch and kind of unnerving. It has also given us a very interesting way of bringing back certain characters, as seen by the fact that Vision is walking and talking and not in pieces in a lab somewhere. So what if we were to have an episode where, within the sitcom world, Vision's quote-unquote dad comes to visit the family, a classic sitcom premise, and it turns out to be none other than James Spader, the actor behind Ultron. This could not only give us more of Spader's performance as the character, which I think we could all use, but depending on how things play out with the whole resurrecting a synthoid thing, it could also bring Ultron back into the real world, as well as any number of other characters such as Quicksilver, this time apparently played by Evan Peters, but never mind that. Then again, Wanda doesn't exactly have the best memories of Ultron, so maybe creating a less murder body version of him for a bit might be too big of an ask. Speaking of Vision, there is an old fan theory that posits that he might just be the key to Ultron coming back, or at least a part of him is. The idea is that before his death, Ultron left a piece of himself within the Mind Stone, which was used to create him in the first place, so theoretically it could be possible. Then he would have transferred himself into Vision over time and used him as a platform to perhaps escape into cyberspace, where he would lie dormant until such a time where he could return to the physical world within a new robot body. Of course, all this would need to have happened before Thanos ripped the Mind Stone out of Vision's dome, and naturally before Thanos atomized all the stones later on. But hey, it could be something that they retcon into the canon in order to bring him back. Of course, there is an easier, non-Mind Stone related idea here that could be used to produce basically the same outcome. During Age of Ultron, it was pointed out that the Avengers had successfully scrubbed any digital copies of Ultron from the internet. However, what if, and try to follow me here for a second, Ultron left behind another kind of digital backup? What if, somewhere hidden in a back room or in a box mixed in with some other electronic doodads, someone has an external hard drive that contains a backup of Ultron on it, just waiting to get plugged into something connected to the internet? So this could be an easy way to bring him back. Here's an idea. What if instead of bringing the actual Ultron back, we just get an Ultron-like character? See, in Age of Ultron, there was a shot during a montage of Tony Stark loading a new AI into his suit. As he's picking which one, we can see a memory stick labeled Jocasta in the background. In the comics, Jocasta was a robot built by Ultron so that he could have a mate. You know, kind of a Bride of Frankenstein sort of situation. So she was basically a female version of Ultron, if AIs can even have genders like that. Now, imagine if this AI created by Stark, that apparently already exists within the MCU, were to get out, then learn about Ultron and decide to take up his original plan of wiping out humanity. It could make for an interesting twist on the concept of bringing Ultron back. One more possible version of the whole digital copy idea before we move on to some of the more out there and absurd ideas. There is actually a piece of tech that Ultron came into contact with that he could have left a copy of himself within, that wasn't either destroyed or recovered by the remnants of S.H.I.E.L.D. That being the Quinjet that Hulk used to get away after the Battle of Sokovia. In case you don't remember, this Quinjet was the one used by Ultron to gun down Pietro. He tried to get away afterwards using it, only for the Hulk to jump in and literally rip him away from the controls. After flying off, this Quinjet wound up flying through a wormhole of sorts that transported it all the way to Sakaar, which is where it was seen next in Thor Ragnarok. What if a copy of Ultron was left on board that ship's main computer? And in some future film, we find out that he escaped, got a new, shiny robot body, and has taken over Sakaar after the ousting of the Grand Master. Could make for a pretty cool story for the cosmic side of the MCU. Okay, so this fan theory is less of a specific way for Ultron to come back and more of a cool thing that people would like to see. So take it with a grain of salt, like admittedly pretty much everything else on this list. A character we're going to be more than likely getting in the not too distant future is one Adam Warlock, a character hinted at during an end credit scene in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Adam, for those of you who don't know, is an artificially created being who is sort of a mixture of organic and artificial components. Now, one of Ultron's goals within Age of Ultron was to create a pseudo-organic body for himself, which led to the creation of the first and, so far, only synthoid, Vision. So, Adam, it would seem, would be the perfect host for Ultron's digital consciousness, which could lead to a pretty fun face-off between the two. Imagine if Ultron lived through any of the previously mentioned means, and he attempted to infiltrate sovereign systems in order to take over Adam's body. This is a possibility, and would be pretty awesome, in my opinion. The upcoming film Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania is going to introduce us to the time-traveling warlord Kang the Conqueror. And this might just be one way for us to get Ultron back. See, since time travel is now an option within the MCU, it could be a path towards a lot of potentially cool things. Imagine this for a second. What if, in order to help with his evil machinations, Kang goes back in time to gather together some of the biggest and baddest villains in history, and one of them, naturally, turns out to be Ultron. Now, there isn't exactly any precedence for this to happen, which is something I usually like to have when it comes to wild and wacky speculation. But come on, even if it never happened in the comics or anything, you can't tell me that this wouldn't be a totally awesome thing to see. Of course, I wouldn't exactly be doing my job if I didn't bring up the possibility of the multiverse playing into the idea of bringing Ultron back. With Phase 4 seemingly focusing on the multiverse, with WandaVision and the Doctor Strange sequel being fairly obvious about it, and Spider-Man 3 being rumored to be doing so as well, it would seem that the multiverse is going to be playing a big role moving forward. So it could be that we might be seeing some previous villains return to the MCU via alternate reality versions, and Ultron could easily be among them. Imagine if he comes from the world where he successfully conquered Earth, so you'd have a more souped up, more badass Ultron. Of course, I feel like the multiverse is going to be a big part of the series going forward, so it might not be something that happens soon necessarily, but it is an option in the future. In Spider-Man Homecoming, there is a sequence where Spider-Man follows and confronts Vulture while he's making moves against a moving truck containing old Stark tech. After getting stuck within the truck's ultimate destination, a sealed-off warehouse somewhere, there is a quick shot where we see Peter holding what looks like the head of an Ultron drone. And this tells us that Stark does indeed have some leftover hardware from the Ultron situation. Now what if, in order to boost his ability to fight Spider-Man, we find out that Vulture had managed to get away with some tech from this truck, and used it to basically build an all-new Ultron? It is kind of a far-out idea, but hey, it would be a very unexpected villain to add to the MCU version of the Sinister Six. Finally, there is the idea that might just be the simplest solution on this entire list. What if, when Ultron was getting ready to launch his attack on the city in Age of Ultron, he turned to one of his drones and was just like, hey, I know that we're all gonna go fight the Avengers and we are totes gonna win, but maybe you should go hide somewhere far away, just in case we don't, so that, you can carry on as, well, me. Yeah, basically this idea is that somewhere out there in the world is at least one surviving Ultron drone, carrying the information that might lead to return of the ultimate flying deathbot himself. While Ultron was arrogant and believed completely beyond a shadow of a doubt that he was going to succeed, it would have been smart for him to at least have one or two plans in place in case he didn't. I mean, it is the logical thing to do, and this could very well have been one of them. Honestly, I totally meant it when I said that Ultron's potential was wasted. Ultron could have very easily been a multi-phase big baddie akin to Thanos if they treated him right within that movie. Plus, I mean, James Spader's performance is incredibly entertaining, and I would have loved to have seen more of that.